So, Andor Season 2. We are now on episode 7, 8, and 9. We're coming off some pretty fire episodes and a lot of hope going forward that these are going to be the rest of the way. The final 6 episodes are all going to be very, very good. So, we started off with episode 7, which is called The Messenger. And I brought up the little synopsis right here, but I'll read you kind of my general synopsis that I took as notes of what the characters were doing. Um, Starts off with Will, Cassian, and Bix all, it's again 1 year after the previous 3 episodes. That's their formula. 1 year, 3 episodes, 1 year, 3 episodes. So now after this one, it'll be another year, and it'll be BBY2 for this one, and then BBY1 for the next one. So they're all living on Yavin base together. Will's still a little bit more militant because of his time with Saw Gerrera. I was a little disappointed we didn't get any more Saw in these episodes, so spoiler alert, no Saw is included in these ones. But definitely was missed. Will comes with a message for Andor from Luthen that he wants Deidre, the ISB agent, to be assassinated on Gorman. And he gives him, not only does he give him the assignment, but he says it's going to be your revenge too, because she's the one that's been plaguing us this whole time. And she's always out there in the open over there. Cyril, meanwhile, on Gorman is kind of feeling left out of these plans. He's feeling more and more like Deidre is hiding something from him. Dedra, sorry. I keep calling her Deidre, and I also call Lutheran, like as in the religion. Um, these guys' names are a little bit hard to sink into my head because they're all spelled weird too, but they're all a little bit sci-fi and a little bit normal. You get like Isaac and then you get Luthen, and you're like, what the hell? Cyril's feeling a little bit left out. He's realizing more and more is just out of his control, and the resistance people aren't really trusting him anymore. Um, Shocker, since he's been betraying them the whole time. Um, but he just doesn't like feeling like his girl's not telling him all the stuff like she used to, the pillow talk wise. Mon Mothma is feeling the squeeze from the Senate, getting tighter and tighter because everyone's just pro Empire, and she's just feeling lost when she's over there. Deidre is told of the impending plan from the ISB that the Empire is going to seize all the minerals on the planet. They've waited long enough, and they're going to do what they came to do and to prep Gorman for their big operation. There was a weird, and I still like. I would love to hear someone, maybe the Beyond the Dune Scene guys that I listen to the reviews or Theory or Star Wars Theory stopped watching the show because of the realism that was being brought in there. But I want to know what the hell is going on with this weird faith healer they had on Yavin that was just like attracted to Cassian had like a blaster burn on his shoulder, and this weird faith healer just like felt it through the force and started coming over and rubbing it and making it feel better. And you're like, what the hell is this? I want to, and then she started talking about prophecy nonsense and like, you are the messenger, you're the one who's supposed to bring. And I'm like, it feels like it's all a faith religion thing, but it's like weird and out of left field. I don't know who the character is. I must have missed something. Maybe it's in. I'll read the synopsis here in a second that they provide. Maybe it's in there. But it was odd. It was very off-putting. And then the rebellion starts kind of forming its foundation. Cassian ends up leaving at the end of the episode to go back to Gorman to set up his assassination, and he gets yelled at by one of the rebel leaders for being insubordinate and not falling in line. And they're trying to fight a war here, and they can't have people that are just privateers going off whenever they want. And Cassian goes, "It's personal. I'm going," and leaves. So they're forming their actual foundation of a military now on Yavin. That was the end of the episode. Was Cassian was getting ready to set up an assassination. Literally nothing happened in this fucking episode. It was just a C because they had to catch us up what everyone's doing. Yet again, it's a throwaway episode of Andor. Um, to set up the next 2 episodes. They tend to do this. They sacrifice one episode and then try to make the next couple good or next at least the third one of the arc good, so it leaves a good taste in your mouth when you're done with it. It's their formula though, that's what they've been doing, but no shocker here. This episode, friggin' snooze fest the whole time. There wasn't a whole lot to it, and it was slightly confusing. So I'd say this one for the Andor episodes for sure is like a C, just your standard filler setup episode. Let me see. Burned by an injury at his own resistance. When yeah, there's no explanation here. They highlight it right here. He's burdened by an injury of his own resistance to becoming a leader. What? There was I was so confused by that part. Hopefully someone else can go in depth of it. I was watching it late at night. I was very tired. I was just kind of staring at the screen going like, "What in the hell am I watching?" But that's episode 7. Let's move on to episode 8 here. So we got episode 8, where who are you? And now this one was weirdly it caught me off guard a little bit based on how boring the other one was. This was the banger episode of the arc, which was weird to me because their formula has always been two banger, two throwaways, banger, and they use the two throwaways to set up the big one. This one was just tense from start to finish. There are criticisms I have for it, 100%. But here's what happened in the episode. So the Empire starts immediately fortifying the square in Gorman, which at like the beginning of the morning, which throws Cassian off immediately. Uh, they did not expect them to start militarizing in the center of town. Um, he was just going to sit from his hotel room and assassinate Deidre from a balcony, but this all put so much military presence right in front of him that he basically had to abandon ship. Um, the resistance for Gore starts gathering and chanting in the streets, becoming very vocal because they realize what's happening, and they start marching to the square to protest all the military that's going on there. During the march there, Cyril realizes that he has been completely misled by Deidre. He has nothing, or Dedra. He has no idea what's happening anymore. He's just lost it. He goes over to the Empire base and checks in like an Imperial to try to get behind the scenes and get access to Dedra. Um, there's a great scene with Cassian leaving the hotel room where he talks to the bellhop, who he already knows to be a rebel sympathizer, and the rebel sympathizer bellhop says, rebellions are built on hope. Um, when Cassian says, "I hope today goes well for you," or something like that, or he says, "I hope something goes well for you." Um, and then the guy goes, "The rebellions are built on hope," and their chemistry for that just one or two lines was like it stood out when they were talking. So I felt like mentioning it. Uh, the Empire closed the exits to the square and kind of forced everyone into the middle. So Cassian's just roaming around the crowd, trying to get like a good assassin spot the whole time on Dedra, but every time he looks up, she's not really out there. The troops, meanwhile, Dedra's feeling a little out of control, even though she is the figurehead for this whole thing, and this was her plan, because they sent a specialist in to run the actual difficult part of the show for them, and she was just the one to give the order for it. So she's feeling very like this is I'm going to be responsible for all of this, but I can't control any of it. Um, and the troops, meanwhile, are ordered to start patrolling into the crowd, and they already know through early in the episodes that the troops are very young and green, are going to be nervous as hell doing this, and they're pretty useless. So um, it's intentional. They tell him you're committing treason if you don't take your troops into the crowd and start patrolling. He's like, I need that street clear. Go. Meanwhile, Cyril in the Imperial base gets up to see Dedra and immediately starts domestic violence with her. He's choking her. He's very upset. He's basically telling her like demanding to know what's going on and to know the secrets of the Empire because he's been left out and he will not be left out. And don't you dare lie to me and all this stuff. And Dedra, out of fear, spills the beans, tells him the whole plan of the Empire that she's sworn is, to not reveal to anyone, top secret. Cyril then leaves into the crowd, uh, immediately escapes, even though Dedra just says, like, after this will be great, we'll be set up for the rest of our lives. Just get out, just be safe and get out of here. She obviously she forgives him for choking the shit out of her, but he is just shell shocked and goes into the crowd. Um, and that's when um everything goes haywire. Dedra, in the meanwhile, says, "Don't let Cyril leave," and she gets the call for the whole operation to move forward as planned. And their plan was, while the troops were in the crowd, riling everybody up, to sniper shot their own troop, which would trigger a massacre, which would basically trigger the troops to get jumpy and shoot back. And then, so it played out exactly the way the Empire wanted it. They sniped their own troop. The troops shot into the crowd. The crowd organizers had resistance fighters who were armed in there, which makes now a whole lot more sense that they allowed them to steal actual weapons from the previous episode. And those weapons were then fired at the troops, and that started a full massacre in the town square of Empire just destroying unarmed citizens and armed citizens. Um, in the middle of this, the KX droids, who is the model that K2SO is, I just like to call them the K2SO droids, were released into the crowd, and it was friggin' war horror to see them just manhandle it. Like the droids were just flinging bodies left and right, including killing some major resistance characters from Gorman while that was going on. Um, During all of this, Cyril, while he's getting like PTSD, sees Cassian. And I can't remember from the first season or not, but he instantly recognized Cassian, which I thought he only had like a drawing of him or something. But he recognized Cassian, and instead of being mad at the Empire, Cyril, who's been on roid rage this whole fucking episode, just like right before he's about to assassinate Dedra, who doesn't even know is pointing a gun at Dedra, just tackles Cassian from the side and starts trying to choke him out and murder him. And Cassian and him get into a fight for the death. Cyril actually wins this somehow. I still want an explanation for how Cyril won this. He has a gun pointed at Cassian's head, and Cassian's last words would have been, "Who are you?" And instead, like, that would have enraged me if I was Cyril and I knew this guy was like my whole problem. But I digress. Cyril hesitates for a second, and then he's blasted in the back of the head by one of the resistance organizers who he betrayed. So he gets his comeuppance from the resistance organizer. I also want to know how that resistance organizer person got into the town square, um, because he was begging everyone to not go to the town square. So I don't know how the fuck he ended up in there being the one to save the day. But he saves Cassian's life, which I thought was very convenient. K2SO, the droids start to chase Cassian in the streets as they're evacuating, and one of the rebel sympathizers runs their droid. Cassian can't seem to stop it with his guns, and the droid's coming to kill him. But he runs a vehicle into the droid, severing it in half and disabling it. And they agree to split up and escape, and Cassian will take the vehicle and drive off, while the other two go back underground to help Gorman. And they, in the meantime, load up the broken KX droid and put it into the ship. Um, Cassian, yeah, then loads it up and flees the site. So that was the end of the episode there. So I would say this episode was an A. It was almost perfect. It was fantastic to watch. It was edge of your seat tension the whole time. It was cool to see them kind of set up their massacre. My little complaints that prevented it from being S tier are one, and I'm going to address this at the end of two. I do not understand still why they had to make two massacres out of this. The original Gorman massacre was Tarkin killing 500 people in their town square by landing a ship on them. I would have loved to see that in live action. You don't even need Tarkin. Just imply that it's him. Have like the back of his head, hit him with the "you may fire when ready," lyric, whatever, or the line, and have him land on him and give him a squish pancake. That why isn't that good enough? And so they instead made a memorial to that, and then had a second massacre, which was not even as big. It was like a couple hundred people that were killed, and it was like the final straw. But like, why not just keep the original canon one? Why did we have to have two Gorman massacres to be able to do it? So that little complaint. I don't get the reasoning. It almost feels selfish by the show writer that I want to make the massacre, not you. And a couple of his choices do feel that way, so that's part of where that's coming from. But again, a plus episode or a episode. Um, and the other the biggest one that prevented it from becoming an S tier to me was I was really invested in Dedra as a character. Cyril was annoying as fuck to me, but he was attached to Dedra, and his character arc was established. He was a weakling, little POS that constantly buckled under the pressure, and he hero worshipped Dedra because of her loyalty to the Empire. And then when push comes to shove, he all of a sudden becomes Rambo, very physical, very mean, like hurting Dedra, tries to kill Cassian. Like, where the did this all come from? And then he's very disloyal to the Empire at the end of it on behalf of Gorman. And he was betraying them and setting them up the whole time. So I don't know where any of this character arc and motivation came from. It was just like, let's see what happens when we flip everything kind of situation. So they crapped all over Cyril's character and then killed him. There was 0 point to him knowing what's going on. Dedra, meanwhile, became incredibly weak and scared little girl when she got choked. And then she was like forgiving of the violence that was just portrayed on her. She was disloyal to the Empire in the end. Her whole career is pretty much made now, but it's like, at what cost? Um, she's gonna. I don't even know if it's worth showing her again on the show. Like, it might just be a waste of screen time at this point. But um, yeah, it was odd to me. Their whole dynamic just flipped, and it felt like there was no explanation for it other than they wanted to show them flip it. I was disappointed with the lack of build for that. And I don't think Cassian should have lost the fight with him. You can have him still get killed and still have Cassian not appear to be like weak and lose to this guy who's been a weakling, terrible fighter the whole time. Cassian's supposed to be this elite assassin rebel, and he kind of got owned. Uh, he got his ass saved. I mean, can you imagine Cyril kills him right there? And again, would have been cooler to see Tarkin's. Maybe now that side note, maybe now that Cyril is dead, we do not have to fucking see his mom anymore. She is the worst fucking character on the show, and she has had more screen time and more dialogue than K2SO. Let that sink in for a little bit. What the is that? But again, a episode. That's me nitpicking what could have made it, I think, perfect. But great episode and unexpected because it was the second episode. So let's move on to episode 9, right? We can't possibly have two banger episodes in a row. It's not an Andor thing to do. So episode 9. Let's bring up the plot here for you guys. And final one for today. This one's called Welcome to the Rebellion, and it was largely focused on the aftermath of Gore and also the Gorman massacre, and primarily on the big rebellious shift in live action of Mon Mothma becoming the leader of the rebellion. So this was really cool, to see in live action. But they did do some things. Overall, loved it. But they did do some things that changed some stuff, and I'm not really sure. Again, it seems kind of arrogant in what they were doing. But um, I'll get to that at the end. So what happened in this episode was the senator from Gorman was arrested right at the beginning of it for no reason other than being the senator from Gorman. Cassian is back at Yavin, and he's told to fall in line and prep for his next mission, which is going to be to help extract the senator, who's going to put everything on the line for him. And he doesn't really want to do this, but he gets talked into it, like, hey, fall in line, be a good rebel for a change. He failed spectacularly on Gorman, so he didn't really have a whole lot of room to talk, right? Mothma knows that she's about to give the speech of her life, denouncing everything. So she's practicing her speech. She's bumped into by Luthen. I can get it. I can get it right. He's my favorite character. I can't even fucking remember his name. He's bumped into him, and he's told that Bail Organa's team has a mole, and they were originally going to be the one to extract her to Yavin Base when they were done with their speech. And he said, do not trust them. You're going to get a guy who's going to say, I have friends everywhere, and that's going to be your code to know that that's my guy, and he is the one you can trust, who is obviously going to be Cassie. Um, Luthen says in the meantime, he meets with Cassian, and Cassian talks about, leaving for Yavin 2, and Luthen just says straight to his face, not going anywhere. This both ends with us at the end of a noose, and I still have fighting to do here. So you guys will go without me. I'm not going. So Luthen just knows the end game for this. He's going to play the game till he gets caught, um, and he knows he's close to being caught. Mothma realizes from speaking to the Lutheran that her best friend is also a mole for Lutheran, and she wants to know when this started. And she said 2 years ago at the wedding, and she's like, "Oh my God, get out of my sight!" She's like, I'm more betrayed by that than anything ever. Even though it was all for protecting her, but she was feeding in, information straight to, a different rebel leader. Um, Bail Organa, right before they get ready to give this speech, their big plan, by the way, was they weren't allowing senators to just speak, and, it had been predetermined who was going to speak. Bail Organa uses like a little known code to give Mon Mothma the floor through the Senate chambers, and that's when Mon Mothma is going to give her big speech against the Empire and then escape. But on the way in, he says the line, "Let's tear this shit up." And I was just sitting there like, this is another classic example of how Andor just pulls you out of the Star Wars universe unnecessarily. Just don't say the word shit right there. And we have cuss words, or just don't use a cuss word right there. Like, I get what you're trying to do, but you didn't need to do that. I don't know why they felt the need to put that in there, but it just pulled me out of the scene right before Mothma is about to give her big speech. Then Mothma does give her speech. They did change it from a little bit from Rebels for the better. It was more in depth. I think it lacked a little pizzazz, and I think part of it was because they started booing and stuff during the middle of it, which, would normally happen, but because of all the ambient noise and stuff, it kind of put a damper on Mon Mothma's big speech moment a little bit. But she immediately leaves after calling Emperor Palpatine the monster that we created. So by name called out the Emperor in the middle of the Senate floor. She turns to leave immediately, bumps into Cassian. Cassian convinces her that he's the guy to escort her out. As they're escorting her out, one of Bail Organa's team tries to apprehend her, not on Bail Organa's orders, but from ISB. And Cassian kills them, and then her best friend happens to be in there in the room watching that team too, and says, "I'm going to help you guys escape still. I'll hold everybody here. You guys go." So it's like his one last kind of act for Mon Mothma after betraying her, just convincing her, I'm still your friend. I'm going to get you out of here too. I'm going to help, even though I've betrayed your trust. I forgot to mention too, the entire time the ISB is trying to cut the feed to the Senate, but due to rebel delays, she's able to complete her speech, and it's cut like right as she calls for Emperor Palpatine's head. They try to lock down the entire Senate floor and stuff, and go arrest Mon Mothma. So it turns into this, high intense kind of subtle. How are we going to escape from here? Chase. Cassian goes to where their car is, which I'm not sure how you don't check where their car's parked is the first place where you're looking for someone who's trying to escape for the thing. But apparently the troops didn't know that. Cassian kills her ISB spy driver, and then is able to get her out of there. Um, Mothma keeps freezing during the whole thing of this. Obviously, she just put her whole life on the line, and it's kind of shell shocking to her. But she's now seeing people being murdered in front of her on behalf of her. Um, she's seeing kind of the horror of war for the first time. So you can kind of see. I would expect her to be more stoic about it, but she is yet to be exposed to this stuff. So it was kind of cool to see that. I would have thought her to be more composed because, like, he's running her out of the building and she's saying things like, "Oh, I don't know if I can do this." I was like, "Girl, you just stood up to the emperor and called him a monster to his face in front of everyone. You can't backtrack this now. Like, you done did it. Let's go." But yeah, she was having trouble with that whole part of it. They get there, and they go to from the driving over there to their undercover apartment, and agreed from there that they're actually going to split up, um, and that Cassian will not be recognized for the work that he's done. He will not be known as the hero that snuck Mon Mothma out of there. What they're going to actually do is put Mon Mothma with Gold Squadron, fly her in like a hero, and protect her in the air while she broadcasts a rallying cry for the rebellion, which is covered in the show Rebels. I think it's called Secret Cargo, the episode, I'm pretty sure. But that episode was all about the Phoenix Squad being the one to rescue Mon Mothma after her speech, and give her big speech on the way in to rally the rebels and start the rebellion. So they're kind of course correcting their little error there by covering it up, saying Cassian's deeds will forever be remembered by those who know he did it, but we're not going to say that we squirmed her out of there. She's going to come out of there like a beaming light, standing up for rebellion and rally everybody. So for the rebellion, basically Cassian's told her not getting credit, and Cassian could give a flying fuck. He was like, whatever, man, job's done. And he left, which I thought was really cool. That's very centered around Cassian. But he mentions to them, hey, I brought a droid back. Start repairing it. It's a KX droid. And he goes and wants to spend some time with Bix. He sleeps with her. In the morning, he wakes up. Bix is gone from his bed, and he finds a Dear John letter. And this was rough. Bix just straight up tells him, I know I'm getting in your way by being here, and you're going to have to choose between me and the rebellion at some point, and I'm just going to make that decision for you. And I'm too much of a She literally says, I'm too much of a coward to tell you to your face, so I recorded this message. Um, she says, I'm making the decision for you. I'm going to find you when the rebellion's done, but I'm choosing the rebellion over us. I'm making that decision for you, and I'm out. And she boogies before he can even wake up. The transport's already gone. He has no idea where she's gone. So he loses his girl. And at the end of the episode, they finally boot up K2SO, and they've reprogrammed him. And in Alan Tudyk's voice, he says, I would appreciate if you stop pointing the gun at me if I haven't offended you. And now we get finally, how many episodes in? 20 episodes into Andor, maybe 18. We get K2SO finally. So I'm very much looking forward to the next episode. That was the end of that episode. Again, another A episode. I would say an A minus if I had to choose between the two. I think the Massacre was more interesting and action packed, but this one was a great moment in Star Wars history that we got to see in live action. Great episode. I did not like, again, here's what's my nitpicking to explain why it's not an S tier for me. They changed their own lore in Rebels and what she says in her speech to fit the narrative of the show, which is fine because I think they did a better job with this version than they did when they just wrote it for Rebels, thinking that was their only chance. However, I have severe PTSD from Disney Star Wars already taking lore that I know and shitting all over it and repurposing it the way they want it repurposed. So whenever they do it, even when it's minor or even when it's slightly better than when it should have been before, I'm like, it's a dangerous fucking line you're walking right here that you're doing it. And previously they only did it to Star Wars Legends, right? So they only did it to things that were not Disney. So you almost understood why they were doing it. They wanted to take control over it. Now they're doing it to their own fucking product. Like this episode alone, and that and combined with the how K2SO is officially introduced to Cassian, that there was already a comic book that told us how that happened. And I already knew they were going to shit on that. But they released that comic book as official lore. So kids or fans that bought Rogue One comic books just got dumped on by that. Fans of like Rebels that are like super high on the way, the Phoenix Squad did all that stuff, their accomplishment kind of got shit on a little bit. And I don't appreciate that they're doing that even if it was fine, like I just don't appreciate that they're willing to do that. And then I saw like a real quick interjection by the director who basically watched the Rebels episode and is like, "Do I have to use this?" And he literally said, "Do I have to use this fucking speech?" Because he didn't like the way the speech was written and they wanted to put their own touch on it. And instead of being like, "Well, yeah, you should keep to it or whatever," he just rewrote it and made it his own. But this is also now the second time this season that they redid the Tarkin massacre. They still kept it out of respect, but then pushed it further down. This one, same thing. Rebels accomplishment took it, pushed it further down. The K2SO original origin just got rid of it completely, and it's their own fucking lore. So it's not a good precedent, and I don't like when they do stuff like that. It's very it gives me PTSD because I have like behind me, behind the Demogorgon right there, there's a whole bookshelf of Star Wars books, and I've read probably over 30 in my life, and I listen to even more on audiobooks. And almost all of that has been picked clean by Disney Star Wars, and I put so much effort into knowing so much about Star Wars lore, and then got told to go fuck myself. So when they're doing it to their own product, I'm getting kind of nervous that like it's just going to be a continuous thing with them. Anytime they run into something they don't like, they're just going to undo it, and it's just going to ruin the canon. Because there is like at this point, like what is canon? I don't even know anymore. They're just rewriting their own canon. Um, so again, we got an A minus grade on this one. Again, it weirdly fit the meta when they changed it with having it cover up the Cassian's operations, which I actually like that aspect of it, making Cassian a big piece, but also like you're never going to be recognized. It makes sense for his character. Bix leaving felt like at the end of the episode, although it felt dramatic and unexpected and well written. It felt like the easy way out because I was just talking to my friend about all the characters that need to die during this season, and she was one on that list because we know that Cassian dies in Rogue One, and we're getting towards the end here. Bix needed to die to tie up that loose end and also send Cassian over the edge to become that cold, calculating rebellion assassin that he becomes by Rogue One. Um, but I didn't anticipate Bix abandoning Cassian, so it was a choice. I thought it was the easy way out though, because now they don't have to kill their victim they put on screen and make Cassian go incredibly dark. They can just kind of remove her from the situation and still have it trigger Cassian to be a little bit dark. Um, K2SO is back, um, which was huge. It was a tense, it was a fun episode watching them escape from the Senate and all that stuff, and not knowing who's going to make it, who's not, because we know a lot of these characters are going to die. So in these last three episodes here, we know a bunch of people probably aren't going to make it, and it's going to get ramped up. So I'm pretty excited going forward. It feels like the director has puzzle pieces and he's just jamming certain things in to make it fit, but the overall puzzle has been a beautiful fit. Like we know where it's going, and he's like, I can make this great, but I need to bend this piece a little bit here to make it fit. And that's kind of how he's approaching Star Wars. And I'm not sure I'm loving it, but because of his tweaking of the lore and all that. But you know, I'm gonna let him cook. He's done a good job. He's done a good job. And I although K2SO is back, I'm a little confused why they didn't go the route that I think we all thought they were going, which was Cassian's little friend robot that has been with him from the beginning that goes Cassian, Cassian. Um, we all love him, and I think everyone and their mother thought that they were going to take the droid brain out of that and put it into K2SO, and that's what was going to be his little friend, and why the droid behaved nicely towards Cassian. I I I would love to know the explanation why they just went with we reprogrammed him and Cassian just has a new friend now. I think you could have had some serious depth if you just moved the droid from one memory to another. It would have been cool. Been a cool little origin having K2SO be this little harmless droid from the beginning. But yeah, it chose not to do that. Overall, um, I had Andor as a low B. I would probably move it now to that middle B because I'm anticipating this last few episodes to again bump it up again, um, to a B plus kind of series overall. It's going in that high intensity direction. We've seen some great stuff, but this might have been the best arc so far in any of the Andor arcs. But I'm worried that they might have peaked it a little too early here, and we're going to kind of sputter to the end. But we'll see. I have faith that they're going to end strong here. This arc in general was an A plus, and just those little things I mentioned earlier prevented it from being an S. It's mainly what happened with Dedra, but there's finally not two throwaway episodes. There was two great episodes and one throwaway episode, so that was great. Tiny changes would have made it, all the way up top. Lutheran is still Lutheran. I keep saying it, man. Luthen is my MVP of the series for sure. He's just every scene he's in is just fire. Cassian has gone way up in his scenes and his fighting and all that stuff and what he's willing to do for the rebellion. To me, his character just keeps getting better. And Mothma has been fire from the beginning and continues to be fire going there. But finally, we have Cyril gone, and hopefully that means his mom is off the show. We don't have to deal with that fucking crap anymore. Dedra's stock, unfortunately, has plummeted beyond help. She was one of my favorite characters on the show, probably top four. Um, Her character just got dumped on, and I don't even know what they're going to be able to show with her for the rest of the way, or what's even left for her to have. She's just kind of a wreck. Maybe losing Cyril and all that will force her to become even more hardened, but I would think that Dedra has to die, Luthen has to die, um, at a bare minimum. I think that Kid Will's going to die. Um, I would have assumed Bix is going to die, but that's not going to happen. And we better get a lot of K2SO in these last 3 episodes because, my God, if you have 2 seasons of a show called Andor and you only have 3 episodes of K2SO, like, go fuck yourself. Like, he is their companionship is the best part of Rogue One. So they need to give Alan Tudyk some more time to cook here. Like, let's hope these 3 episodes are bangers for him. I've been waiting for K2SO this entire time. He's my favorite part of Rogue One. So I'm glad he's back. But I'm very curious to see how Luthen is caught and what the end game is for that. Again, might be the peak so far, but let's see. I still don't get why they covered up the Tarkin massacre, and I'm hoping the rest of the way it climbs up to that B plus, maybe A minus range if it finishes off with a complete utter banger for the last 3. But they're gonna likely spend an episode adapting us for the last year. So our first episode out of the gate is probably gonna be pretty boring. But hopefully we get some good scenes. But that'll be it for my Andor season 2 review here.